Good afternoon. All in response. I'm Adam Lupel, IPI Vice President, and it is my distinct honor to welcome you to this Global Leaders Series event featuring Nobel Peace Prize Laureate, Dr. Denis Mukwege. Many thanks to the Panzi Foundation for partnering on this event. In particular, Emily Warren, Executive Director of the Panzi Foundation U.S. office. It really has been a tremendously smooth process putting this together with you, so sincerely, greatly appreciated. Dr. Denis Mukwege is an outspoken global advocate for the rights of survivors of sexual violence, receiving the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize for his, quote, efforts to end the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war and armed conflict, together with the Yazidi activist Nadia Murad. These efforts resonate deeply with the work of IPI. IPI's Women, Peace, and Security program works to understand the full continuum of gender-based violence, to understand how the violence women experience in conflict is connected to the risks they face in daily life, and how gender-based violence presents an unacceptable barrier to their full, equal, meaningful, and safe participation in political life and peace initiatives of all kinds. As the Secretary General stated in his most recent report on women, peace, and security, which cites IPI's work on UN tools for addressing conflict-related sexual violence, quote, as long as oppressive patriarchal social structures and gender biases hold back half of our societies, peace will remain elusive. Dr. Mukwege's efforts to draw attention to the protection of women and advocate for those responsible for sexual violence to be brought to justice make him one of the world's most respected activists on human rights and gender equality, and we are truly grateful to have him back at IPI. Dr. Denis Mukwege was born in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and studied medicine in France. He holds a PhD in medical sciences from the Université Libre de Bruxelles, where he's a professor. He is the founder and president of the Panzi Hospital and Foundation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He has spent decades treating survivors of sexual violence and women with severe gynecological problems. In addition to the Nobel Peace Prize, Dr. Mukwege has received seemingly every award imaginable for his work, including the UN Human Rights Prize, the Right Livelihood Award, the Sakharov Prize of the European Parliament, and most recently, the 2024 Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity and the IRC Freedom Award just this week, I think, yeah, tomorrow. Time magazine has listed him among the world's 100 most influential persons, and the Carter Foundation named him a citizen of the world. All of this, and yet in preparing for this event and speaking to him just now, one gets the sense that he may only just be getting started. This year, Dr. Mukwege became the newest member of the Elders, an independent group of global leaders founded by Nelson Mandela, and he has recently expanded his work, which he will speak to today, to include a heightened focus on transitional justice as one of the ways to end the culture of impunity and prevent the recurrence of violence, and to promoting transparent and responsible sourcing of minerals to end human rights violations and the illegal exploitation and trade of strategic minerals, an issue at the heart of issues in the DRC. And he has been vocal that this area of work is becoming ever more urgent with the green transition that is scaling up the demand for these minerals globally. There is really so much to discuss with this extraordinary man, and I now have the honor of inviting Dr. Mukwege to the podium where he will share some prepared remarks, and then we will have a brief conversation on the stage before opening it up for Q&A with all of you. So Dr. Mukwege, welcome back to IPI. It is a sincere honor. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleague and advocates for peace. It's an immense honor to stand before you today, not only as a doctor who has spent decades tending to survivors of sexual violence, but also as a citizen of a land blessed with immeasurable beauty and riches, and yet cursed by a long and brutal history of suffering, the Democratic Republic of Congo is a paradox, a country of unparalleled natural wealth in minerals, but plagued by some of the gravest human rights atrocities of our time. Today, I wish to address three interlinked issues: human rights, economic drivers of conflict, and the Congo's impact on our interconnected world and environment. Together, these topics outline the fight for Congo's future and its profound relevance to the global community. First, we must acknowledge the continuing violation of human rights in my country. The atrocities committed in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have made it the deadliest conflict since World War II, with over 6 million lives lost. Today, 7 million people displaced and countless women subjected to unspeakable violence. This violence, especially the weaponization of sexual assault, is not random, but deliberate. It aims to terrorize, humiliate, and destroy communities. In 2010, the United Nations released a groundbreaking document, the UN Mapping Report. This report meticulously documented 617 incidents of severe human rights abuses committed in the Democratic Republic of Congo between 1993 and 2003. It brought to light some of the darkest chapters in our nation's history, revealing brutal mass killings, the weaponization of sexual violence, and egregious war crimes against humanity, crime against humanity, and even acts that could amount to the crime of genocide. The report was intended as a turning point, a guide for the international community and Congolese authorities to develop and implement a comprehensive transitional justice strategy to defeat the culture of impunity. Yet, over a decade later, we find ourselves facing an unbearable reality. The report's recommendations have remained largely unimplemented. It purges gathering dust in the forgotten drawer at the United Nations. The crimes that were meticulously documented have not been prosecuted, and the architects of terror continue to live freely, often even holding position of power. This inaction has not only denied justice to victims, but has perpetuated a cycle of violence that grips the people of Congo to this very day. We cannot build peace upon mass graves, nor can we hope for reconciliation without truth and justice. It is imperative that the international community support the call for a new mapping exercise. But this time, we must do things differently. A renewed mapping report must come with a guarantee that its findings will be translated in concrete action. This means creating specialized judicial mechanisms such as an international criminal tribunal for the DRC and or mixed or hybrid chambers within the Congolese judiciary to prosecute those responsible for war crimes and crime against humanity. These judicial bodies must be empowered to operate with independence and the resources necessary to deliver justice effectively. We must also ensure that the recommendations lead to meaningful consequences, including targeted sanctions on perpetrators and their enablers, and structural change that address the roots of impunity. However, accountability alone is not enough. Lasting peace in the DRC requires sweeping reforms in our security and justice sectors, systems that have too often been complicit in or overwhelmed by the cycles of violence. The security sector must be rebuilt to prioritize the protection of civilians rather than serving political or economic interests. This requires comprehensive vetting and training of military and police forces, establishing strict oversight mechanisms, and ending the practice of integrating former militia members into national forces without accountability. We must foster a professional, ethical, and disciplined security system that can secure our communities and uphold the rule of law. Equally urgent is the reform of our justice system. For too long, our judicial institutions have been under-resourced, susceptible to corruption, and unable to address international crime effectively. We need to build a robust, independent judiciary that can hold even the most powerful accountable. This includes increasing investment in judicial infrastructure, training judges and prosecutors in international humanitarian law, and implementing measures to protect witnesses and survivors who risk their life to testify. We must also ensure that survivors of violence have access to comprehensive legal support so their voices are heard and their rights are upheld. Our people have endured enough. It is time to transform our institutions into instruments of justice and peace, rather than pillars of impunity. I call on global leaders and all defenders of human rights to support this vision, not through empty promises, but through concrete action that brings life into the recommendation of a new UN mapping report. We owe it to the victims, to the survivors, who show unparalleled resilience, and to future generations who dream of Congo free from violence and defined by dignity and hope. The path ahead is not easy, but it's necessary. The fight for justice and security sector reform is not only about healing the wounds of the past, it's about protection of civilians, building a rule of law, and developing a foundation for a future where every Congolese citizen can live in peace, free from fear, and full of hope. The world has turned a blind eye to our suffering for too long. Now is the time to act boldly, with courage and compassion, to bring an end to this cycle of violence and impunity once and for all. But let us be clear. The conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo is fundamentally an economic war. Congo is home to an estimate 24 trillion worth and untapped minerals, including cobalt, coltan, and lithium, resources vital for the world green transition. The paradox is heartbreaking. While the world races to build a future powered by clean energy, it does so at the expense of Congolese lives. The proliferation of militias like M23, often backed by neighboring states such as Rwanda and Uganda, and driven by economic motives, exacerbate the violence. This group controls strategic mineral-rich areas, terrorizing communities through systematic sexual violence and other war crimes. Meanwhile, the illegal exploitation of these minerals fueled global supply chains from our smartphones to electric vehicles. Businesses, therefore, have an enormous ethical responsibility. It is not enough to claim a commitment to corporate social responsibility while benefiting from minerals stained with blood. I urge companies to audit their supply chains rigorously, invest in ethical sourcing initiatives, and support Congolese-led reforms. Business leaders must advocate for regulations that prioritize human dignity and uphold OECD duty of care requirement for mineral supply chains. The economic war demands an economic solution. Businesses can be a force for peace, turning Congo's mineral wealth from a curse into a blessing, provided there is genuine investment in transparency, governance, and local empowerment. Otherwise, the so-called green and clean energy transition will remain red with the blood of Congolese women and children and soiled by the criminal activities of armed groups. Finally, let us consider the environmental dimension. Congo Basin is often called the second lung of the world. A critical carbon sinks second only to the Amazon. It regulates global weather pattern and stores billions of tons of carbon. Yet, its survival is intrinsically linked to the well-being of the Congolese people. As demand for critical minerals accelerates in the face of climate change, we must not repeat the mistakes of the past. We cannot address a climate crisis by sacrificing the Congo system and communities. The future of our planet and the fate of Congo are interconnected. Responsible mineral extraction and environmental stewardship must go hand in hand. I stand before you today not only to highlight these stark realities, but also to call for urgent, coordinated global action. We must end the exploitation of Congo's resources that perpetuates suffering and jeopardize our planet. We must invest in sustainable, ethical practices and ensure that the benefits of the green transition are shared by those who have long borne its cost. To the international community, I say stand with us in this fight, demand justice, promote ethical business, and work toward a future where Congo's immense wealth is a force for development and environment preservation, not violence and despair. Let us ensure that our collective drive for progress and sustainability does not come at the cost of human lives and dignity. The Congolese people deserve peace, justice, and the chance to thrive in their homeland. Your solidarity and action can help make this a reality. Thank you.
You addressed three interlinked issues: human rights, economic drivers of conflict, and perhaps to me most fascinating in some way, Congo's impact on our interconnected world and the world's impact on Congo and something that I think we're seeing in so many contexts and around the world. I have a few questions related to what you spoke to before we come to the floor, so please prepare your questions. And in part, I just want to draw you out a little bit on some of the specificity of the things that you were remarking on. And in some respects, my three questions all relate to the how in many ways. So you highlighted the ongoing inaction regarding the original UN mapping report and the tragic persistent cycle of impunity. So and you call for a renewed mapping report. And so I'm wondering is how can such a renewed mapping report lay better grounds for implementation? You asked for guarantees. So how can a renewed report actually produce those? And what then concrete steps can you recommend? In particular, perhaps the most difficult part is to overcome the political obstacles that have stood in the way of a proper implementation and that have stalled justice thus far. How can that be overcome?
Thank you.
I know that's not an easy question, but
yeah. Thank you so much for this question. The UN mapping report that we have today is from 1993 to 2003. But after 2003, the crimes are still going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And why is this? It's only because what we have in the UN mapping report that we have until 2003, we have many incidents that can be crime against humanity, war crime, even acts of genocide. But when all these crimes are, we don't really care about and just let impunity to take place. So the perpetrators have impressions that they can go on killing. That is the reason we have now 3 decades of violence in Congo, violence on women, violence on children. And perpetrators have impressions that they can just go on killing, destroying everything in total impunity. And for me, it's really very important that the international community can understand that we can't get peace when we don't talk about the mass graves that we have in Congo. We can't talk about peace without justice. And it's not only justice, but also proof and reparations. That is the condition to get the reconciliation in the region. So people can just get this opportunity to talk about what happened and try to get another path for peace. But today, when all the perpetrators have impression that they are protected by the international community, they can kill, rape, destroy without any consequence, how this can stop? Especially when we know that doing this kind of atrocities, they are just chasing the population in their own village, on their land, and they are the ones who are today exploiting this land because it's full of different kind of minerals that are needed for our technology. So I think that to make this new mapping report can be a sign, it can be a strong signal to show that the world can't let impunity go on and can't let women and the body of women to be the battlefield in the Congo. But the big problem is today, we can see that in our system, it's really the double standards is the rule now. And this is sad because when we have the double standard, people have impression that for some people, they can face justice. For others, it's not possible. And the second thing is very important to understand that Congo is connected to the future of our planet. Because I can see how, for example, some people who are exploiting mineral in Congo are destroying the second lung of our planet. We are facing the climate change at this moment. And really, the Congolese forest should be protected. But it's not protected because when there is no security, where there is no good governance, of course, this forest is completely destroyed. And I'm worried about the future because we are all connected on the climate change, and the world should be aware about what is happening in this big forest, where really some armed groups, some countries are exploiting without taking care of the environment. And these things are really, for me, very important. So how to implement this? I think that today we have some rules when it comes to minerals, strategic minerals. And I think that the world can really, for me, it can be possible to don't only talk with politicians. I think that I can say that the politics fell somewhere to fix this question. So why we can't bring on the table also the leaders in business, because they are the ones who are using these minerals. They are the ones who really want to use clean minerals. Why we can bring them on the table and talk about the minerals of Congo? We have the vast reserve of coltan. Without coltan, you can't get all the electronic equipment that we have. Without cobalt, you can't get the batteries. So I think that it's really very important to bring all these companies who are working with all these minerals and who are struggling to get these minerals in and using criminals, because today to get these minerals in Congo, most of the time, is to go through criminals who are exploiting this mineral in a criminal way. So why we can't bring politicians, but also businessmen around the table and talk about how we can get the supply chain who are clean and just protect not only the local population, but also to get all the country to involve. I want to tell you that today, it's only the countries and people who are using violence who can access to minerals in Congo. It's not normal. I think that it should be a competition where any country who wants really to involve in the exploitation of minerals in Congo should be able to involve in this exploitation. But today, it's only for criminals. And my question is, why the world can accept this? Knowing that all this mineral, cobalt is 60% of the reserve, the global reserve is coming from Congo. So you can't speak, you can't really say, I don't want to use it. You can't escape it. You have to use it. It's the same with the coltan. So for me, I think that it's just the lack of political will. And if there is a will to bring all the stakeholders around the table, we can find a solution.
So then how do we then create those incentive structures in order for them to actually take these kinds of actions, to have ethical supply chains and such? I mean, you say it's an economic war, therefore it requires economic solutions. You need to bring the business interests around the table. But I'm wondering again, how do we create that process in which they have an invested interest in doing so? We have some examples in the region for public-private partnerships, multi-stakeholder initiatives. I'm thinking, of course, of like the Kimberley process. Do you see an opportunity for that type of process for
I think that I'm worried with one thing. We have one country, I don't want to talk about countries here, but we have one country who is really exploiting in, it's not only criminal way, but using children, using women in a way that we can't accept. For them, it's just to get this mineral is the most important things. And I'm worried that if we let the monopoly to just one country to get all these strategic minerals, what can happen if this mineral will be needed by other countries? And I think that it's a big mistake today to let just one country to get the monopoly on the exploitation of this strategic mineral in Congo. And for me, there is possibility. I know that in the state, for example, a few years ago, it was the Frank Dodd Act, but it's not, today it's not applicable. But in Europe and the OECD process, I think that this should be strengthened so we can get a system where really we need to know that in this region, when we have mineral, it should be clean. And the only one way to get it clean is not to get processed, it's to get peace. Because if we have peace, this mineral will be clean. And today, it's we can say it's a mineral is stand by blood because just we have war. So why we can't end this war that we know clear that it's economic war and people are fighting, they're fighting to get the control on this mineral. And sometimes some countries are supported to do all these criminal things. So why is this support to these countries that are known as doing aggression? We have the international and humanitarian law was not applicable at all. We have the Charter of the UN. Why is this charter is not used when it comes to Congo, to Africa? And of course, I think that we can use also sanctions because there it's doing things against the international law and laws and humanitarian law. So I think that we have many possibilities that we can use to stop this use of violence in this region. But the big question is, why not? Because I think that sanctions can be used to use international and humanitarian laws. It can be possible. And I think that all these things are not used. And when especially some countries can support the countries that is known as aggressor, so the question is, why is this? If we belong all to the UN.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's I think many people in the audience who are probably better experts on the regional context in the DRC and the complexities of the war, which are legion and go on for decades. I think on the question of the minerals and the economic incentives, I think my question would be, how do you then create a balance between the sanctions and incentives for international business to say, I can't use these minerals if they're conflict tainted, right? And I think back to the Kimberley process, which has has mixed success. We had an event here a year ago or so with Botswana and others, and so I recognize it's complicated. But I recall when it began, it was a mix of both international law, public effort, but also importantly civil society that made the pressure, because businesses have to feel that they are the bottom line is impacted if they actually use these minerals that have fueled conflict. Is there an opportunity for that, do you see?
I think that few years ago, we did the advocacy, for example, in Europe to try to get a law. And we got a resolution, but I think really if we don't involve the companies who are using this minerals.
But what gives them the, my question is, we say this to the businesses.
Yeah.
And if it's working for them, they're not going to do it out of the goodness of their heart.
No, you know that there are laws that avoid them to use this mineral. So they're trying to get it by the way that they know that it's not correct. So for me, I think that when they are aware about these minerals that they are using, for example, for the coltan, they know clear. I met them and we discussed with them. They know that the only one way is really when we have 80% of coltan in the southern North Kivu. So there is no another possibility to get these minerals. So it's clear for them, and they know that the law and the OCD duty just refuse them to use this kind of minerals. So for me, they are using and losing a lot of money in trying to get a supply chain who is clean. But the way to clean this supply chain is to stop the war.
Yeah. Very good. So I want to go back, but before I open up the floor, I just want to go back to one further question about security sector reform that you mentioned. And you said accountability is not enough, but we need comprehensive reforms in the DRC security and justice sectors. And I wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on those specific challenges those sectors face, and then in light of the imminent withdrawal of the UN mission of MONUSCO, you asked for support from the international community. I'm just wondering what type of support could the UN or other international actors provide to support that security sector reform initiatives that you envision, obviously without infringing on your sovereignty?
Yes, I can say that I'm so sorry, and I did many statements about the pullout of the UN in Congo, because I think that they will leave Congo without really put an end or finish their job. That is my impression, because before to leave Congo, they should be sure that there is a system which is working. But today, we don't have any system. And especially when it comes to the security sector and the justice sector. These two sectors are not working at all. And if you don't have the security sector and the justice sector who are not working, so you can't get a governance in the country. And I'm sorry that if Ian will pull out tomorrow, it will be just a chaos, because everyone will try to get his part of cake, and I think that it will be just a mess. So for me, it's clear that today we have an army in Congo, but this army is led by people who were in the armed groups, and most of them can be accused for crime against humanity or war crimes. But they are the ones who are leading the army or they are in the administration. And can you imagine for the population to be protected by the people who raped them, killed all their family, destroyed their village, and they know clearly the names, they know the person, but this person are in charge, in position of decision in the country. And for me, I think that without doing a correct vetting to know exactly what happened and what all these different leaders in the army, in the administration did, I think that this will never be an army, because they will be there just to protect themselves and protect their interest, in fact, to protect the population and really be there for the civilian population. This is, for me, very important to start with a vetting mechanism to bring all the people who are accused for human rights abuses or a crime against humanity or war crime to justice. And I think that without doing so, we will not get an army. The second thing is we need really to build, after this vetting, is important to build a new army where really people can, we can get an army where they are professional in what they are doing. They know that the role is to protect the population, in spite to be an army who is just killing his own population, destroying, because they were not prepared to protect the population. In the armed group, many of them, when they were only 12, 14 years. And in their mindset, it was they were prepared to kill, to rape, to destroy. And to bring them in the army, I think that it's just a mistake, a big mistake, because we can see that after 25 years, the system is not working. So we need to get really a sector of security that can be completely changed and get people who can really understand what is the mission of the security sector. And this must touch the army, police, and the intelligence services. And if all these three services are not working, I think that Congo can't get an army. And the big problem is that the UN, before to leave, should be sure that this mechanism is put on place. Because today I can say that the army is weak because most of the leaders came from the armed groups, and these armed groups, they know clear that they did many abuse of human rights, and they can't really be there to protect the population. The second thing is justice. Without really a strong system of justice, it's not possible really to rebuild a system of justice where people can rely to their own system. So I think for me it's really very important, this reform of the security sector to be done before UN to pull out.
I could keep this conversation going for quite some time. It's really fascinating, but I do want to give the audience an opportunity. As I see, there's plenty of questions. I'm going to start at the back here with Gay, and then come forward here. And I see two here. Maybe we'll. Can we gather a couple and then you respond, or do you want to go one-to-one? One-to-one? Okay. All right.
Thank you very much. Gay Rosenblum Kumar with Nonviolent Peace Force. The UN expert report has said there's credible evidence that Rwanda is funding militia. And on the other hand, the government of Rwanda denies this and says that Tutsi citizens in DRC are treated as second class and in fact are under threat. How long will this stalemate go on? And how much do you think this impacts the things you've been talking about, the illegality and instability, and what can be done to resolve it? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure that the international community are aware about what is happening in the region. And it's clear that now Congo is paying really very, very heavy cost after much of the genocide of Rwanda. And I think that today to talk about the Rwandese people in Congo who are threatened, I think that this can't be a reason to kill 6 million of people, to get 7 million of internally displaced people. I think that there is a solution. And it's sure that everyone should be in Congo. If he is a citizen of Congo, his right should be respected. He should be in Congo and be protected by the government. And I have impression that this can be the alibi, but it's not enough to explain what is happening in Congo. It's not a reason to rape countless women in Congo. So I think that if we can put on balance what, for example, Rwanda is saying and what is happening in Congo now for 30 years, I think that there is no reason to go on in this situation. If we have people who are speaking Kinyarwanda and living in Congo, Congo is their country. They can get all the rights in Congo. But it is not a reason to come in Congo and kill millions of people. It's not acceptable. I think that this way to see things is not should not be accepted by the international community. We have good reports from the experts of UN, and we know that even today we have more than 4,000 soldiers from Rwanda in Congo. And this is an aggression. But why the international community is keeping silence? Everyone is talking about the aggression of Ukraine, but no one is talking about the aggression of Congo. And I think that when I talk about the double standard, is just completely, I can say that we are destroying the system that we have. The UN was a strong system to protect our security as a whole. But today we are destroying it just in using the double standard. And I don't think that this is the solution. Everyone knows what is happening in Congo, and the solution is just to ask Rwanda to stop what they are doing in Congo. There is no other solution for this question. And then after we can maybe ask the Congolese government to protect not only one population, but to protect everyone.
Dr. Mukwege, thank you so much for sharing your insight and your passion. It's great to see that you really care about this. So my name's Jose Garcia. I'm with Angel Hack. People turn their ideas into concepts to make the world a better place through technology. And so I'm just thinking, like, you ask us to stand with you. What does that look like in practice? Because, you know, the reality is that, you know, what you're asking for the big players, but most people are like individuals. They might care, but they can't. How does that individual who cares, because those are the people that change the world, unless they're willing to do what Mother Teresa did and fight against authority their entire life, or Greta Thunberg most recently. So how does that play out? What can we do to encourage these people that want to stand along with Congo, but don't feel like they're in a position of authority to make a difference?
We've got a lot of hands. Do you mind if I take a couple?
Yeah.
Then the right behind the gentleman. Yeah, here, please. Yeah, and you can then pass it to your colleague there on your right.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Can I speak in French?
Oui.
Sorry.
Yeah. Introduce
okay.
yourself. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Ok,
Cool.
mais
Okay.
merci beaucoup. Merci, docteur, pour votre présentation. Je suis Amédée Fikirini, je suis le directeur pays de Life and Peace Institute. Je suis basé à Bukavu, donc je suis ici pour une mission, mais j'ai eu l'occasion effectivement de participer à cette rencontre. Je suis content de votre présentation. Tout ce que vous avez dit, vous avez déjà dit ça plusieurs fois et nous pensons que c'est très important effectivement que vous insistiez parce qu'on constate que malgré toutes les recommandations qui sont données dans beaucoup de forats comme celui-ci, il n'y a pas de solutions qui arrivent. Comme vous l'avez dit, le rapport mapping a été établi depuis plusieurs années. Il y a des recommandations claires dans ce rapport, mais le grand problème, c'est la mise en application des recommandations issues de ces rapports des Nations Unies sur les violations graves des droits de l'homme en République démocratique du Congo. Je suis tout à fait aussi d'accord avec les solutions que vous proposez par rapport à la coupure même de la chaîne des minerais par les multinationales, mais aussi de faire un peu de pression sur les pays voisins qui déstabilisent l'Est de la RDC. Tout ça, je suis tout à fait d'accord, mais ma grande préoccupation, c'est au niveau de la solution sur la justice que vous proposez et qui est très importante pour une solution durable. On ne peut pas construire la paix s'il n'y a pas de justice. Je suis tout à fait d'accord avec ça. Mais la grande question que nous nous posons, nous qui sommes sur le terrain, nous qui travaillons avec vous chaque jour sur le terrain, c'est que la plupart des personnes qui sont concernées par ces crimes sont dans le gouvernement, sont dans le Parlement, sont dans l'armée, sont un peu partout à des niveaux très élevés où c'est très difficile de bouger les lignes, tout simplement parce qu'il faut se protéger. Ce sont des personnes, par exemple, si c'est une loi qui doit être posée, qui doit être votée à l'Assemblée, bon, la plupart des députés, nous le savons, qui sont votés, ils sont aussi des personnes qui viennent qui ont commis, quelque part, certaines personnes ont commis des crimes. Et souvent, il y a le blocage entre le gouvernement au niveau interne et la communauté internationale qui pourrait apporter certaines solutions. Et on s'est dit, quelles sont les stratégies que vous proposez
Great.
qui peuvent apporter des
Forgive me, I was
solutions
going to
plus ou
ask
moins
my
durables?
colleague to
I'm sorry.
summarize your remarks, but now we've got a speech,
I'm
so it's
sorry.
very
It
difficult.
was justice of Smith,
Yeah,
but I'm sorry.
but I,
Okay, it's
Yeah.
okay. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
okay.
Thank you. It's all
maybe that's enough to respond, or do you have sort of, it's like a very short two-finger maybe to, because you're also with Life and Peace Institute?
I am with the
Yeah,
Life and Peace
yeah.
Institute. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Mukwege. I think my question is very short. Have African institutions failed the people of Congo? And I ask this because Congo is strategically placed. Congo is part of ECAS, one of the RECs. Congo is part of the EAC. Congo is part of SADC, and Congo is a member state of the African Union. So my question here is, have African institutions failed the Congo, and what role do they have to play when it comes to the peace and security issues that you talk about, particularly as it relates to the border communities, when you speak about the involvement of member countries in the region and who enter the Congo through the border areas? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll come back to Dr. Mukwege, and then we'll have another round. I see one hand in the back and one over here as well.
Je crois que je vais commencer par vous. Il est clair que... yes.
Yeah, you can, very short, yeah.
Want to.
Just the gist, if you.
So the question raised was, despite recommendations, implementation stays an issue, and how could the issue of implementation be addressed? And as being on site, he works in Bukavu, we wonder that the people concerned are actually in positions of power and they want to protect themselves. And there are blockages between the government and the international community. So what do you suggest in those terms?
Je pense que c'est là où la communauté internationale échoue. Puisque lorsqu'il y a des crimes de guerre, des crimes contre l'humanité, et même des actes qui peuvent être constitutifs du génocide, la décision ne devrait pas dépendre des criminels. La décision devrait dépendre des instances internationales, comme par exemple le Conseil de sécurité, qui devrait prendre des décisions pour créer des juridictions capables de faire face à ces crimes contre l'humanité. Et attendre à ce que ce soit les criminels qui... en fait, constituent des juridictions pour les juger, eh bien, c'est ce qu'on nous demande de faire, mais ça sera impossible. Et nous avons plusieurs exemples où les crises ont été arrêtées puisque la communauté internationale s'est imposée par des juridictions internationales. Et je ne vois pas en quoi est-ce que les Congolais, avec 6 millions de morts, on n'a pas droit à un tribunal, à un mécanisme international de justice. Et pour moi, je pense qu'il est clair qu'il faut exiger, continuer à demander à ce qu'il y ait des chambres mixtes ou avoir un tribunal pénal international pour le Congo et pour les crimes qui ont précédé 2002, pouvoir se référer peut-être à ces mécanismes, mais aussi pour des crimes qui ne concernent pas, qui concernent le ICC, de pouvoir se référer. Donc, on a quand même une panoplie de juridictions internationales qu'on peut créer ou qui existent, mais qui ne sont pas utilisées en ce qui concerne la République démocratique du Congo. Et ceci, parfois, on nous dit que c'est puisque notre pays ne demande pas. Mais comment notre pays va demander alors qu'il est dirigé par des gens qui ont commis des crimes? Moi, je pense que, et c'est là où moi j'interpelle les Nations Unies en disant, ne partez pas avant d'avoir réglé cette question. Et c'est comme si les Nations Unies veulent partir vite par la petite porte, alors que les grandes questions ne sont pas résolues, spécialement la question de la justice, et qu'on ne peut pas demander aux criminels d'établir la justice. Je crois que c'est à nous de demander, c'est à la communauté internationale de se rendre compte que ça coûte trop cher l'aide humanitaire qui est donnée au Congo depuis 30 ans. C'est trop cher, plus de 1,5 milliard chaque année. Je crois que cet argent peut servir au développement, que continuer à déplacer les gens de leur village pour leur donner l'aide humanitaire. En ce qui concerne...
Maybe give my colleague,
yeah.
Agnes Chimbombo, by the way, she's my colleague here who did not know this was going to be part of her job today.
This is where the international community fails because when there are international crimes, it should not depend on criminals, but it should depend on the United Nations Security Council to take action. And why don't we have the right to a special tribunal or ad hoc tribunal for the crimes in Congo? Not only these international crimes, such as war crimes, crimes against humanity, and certain crimes that may amount to genocide, but also for crimes that go beyond the crimes under the Rome Statute. We say that it's also the duty of our country to ask for those things, but how is our country going to make these specific demands if it is led by people who commit crimes themselves?
How we can make a difference as a person. I think really, what if you can visit our country and visit, for example, my hospital where I'm treating victims of sexual violence. And if you can ask them, what can I do? The thing that they will ask you is your voice. And I think that your voice is really needed. We need all of you to raise your voice and just talk about what is happening in Congo, because the situation in Congo is special, but it can happen everywhere. I want just to give you an example. When the war started, my hospital was attacked and my patients were killed in the hospital and the staff also were killed in the hospital in 1996. And for me, it was just a shock. I was shocked by what happened to my staff and to my patients. And I was thinking that this could never happen without a reaction of the international community. I remember that I get a discussion with the special envoy of the SG, and he just told me, okay, I will take all the complaint and we'll see what will happen. 30 years after, the families of the victim in my hospital still asking me what happened to our relatives. And I can't answer because there is no justice. And at this moment, I was thinking that this is a special thing that happened in Congo, and maybe it can't happen in other conflicts. But today we can see that hospitals became the target of all the conflicts that we have. So when you open the door to let crime without justice, it means that this crime will be repeated by others. And today, it's become normal to target hospitals, to kill patients in the hospital, to kill children even when they are babies. So I think that we need really to strengthen our system. The UN system is become very weak because we are doing these double standards. And when we can't really stand for the right and the rule of law should be respected by everyone, I think that the weakness is just taking more place. And for me, is clear that your voice is very important. We need to stand and just ask that the rule of law should be respected everywhere without exception. When it happens, we need to understand that it can happen everywhere, and you don't need that it happen in your country or it happen for someone, you know. If it happened and it against the international law, we should raise our voice as a community, as human, to just outcry and say, this is not acceptable. So what we need really in Congo and what you can do as person is your voice. how you can use your knowledges, how you can use your voice to just bring this question on the table. And it's not only the Congolese question, because it's happening now everywhere. We need really a solidarity to fight against this lack of respect of international law and the charter of the UN. The second question was about Africa. I think that, I'm so sorry to say it, but sometimes we Africans, we are just saying, okay, why the Europeans are interested in the crisis between Ukraine and Russia, and not talking about what is happening in Africa. I think that this is really the responsibility that we Africans should take. It's not normal that in Africa we have many crises where you can see that some countries in Africa are fueling conflict in other countries. And I think that the young people in Africa should stand up and just show leaders that this should not happen. If in Europe they are fighting against what Russia is doing in Ukraine, African leaders should fight against what Rwanda is doing in Congo, because it's the same. But when they keep silence, they become complicit of what is happening in Africa. And I think that Africa must be built by Africans. And we need really to be enough strong to just fight against all the people who don't want to respect law and just are using power and manipulation to get their own power. Thank you.
Thank you. So we could take, he answered it. Yeah, he answered it. Your voice.
Where's
He
your
said it-
voice?
I thought he answered it very, very well. So we got one more, we can do one more quick round. Unfortunately, I see tons of hands. This woman all the way in the back has been patiently waiting. And then I'm going to come up here and here. And if you can be very quick, we'll do the 4, and that'll be it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the great conversation, Doctor. My name is Alimata Koulibaly. I am from Mali. And my question is, how can we come up with a solution for African countries that's going through crises like Congo? We had the same problem in several countries. The problem of MINUSCO, the problem of MINUSMA, the problem of MINUSCA, and they all come up to one big problem. The peacekeeping of the United Nations, they've been there for a while, and there was no improvement. In my country, we had to get rid of some of the, I would say, partners, long-term partners, in order to stabilize the country. And because of that, my country has been sanctioned by not only the international community, but even also African community, even though Mali is being part of, is a member of African Union. And we are going through the same problem over decades. So how can we come up with a solution to show the world that Africa cannot take this any longer? We have to be treated equally like everyone. And the future also is in Africa. Young Africans, I believe most of the time they follow their wealth in the international communities. And they are dying in the water going for the wealth. Africa is being deprived from their natural resources for so long. And we've always been talking about poverty in Africa. So as far as I know, Africa is not a poor continent. So we need to come up with a solution and treat Africa equally with others.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. We'll come then up here in the first and second row.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Mukwege, for your presentation. Congo faces many challenges, but which is a common challenge for most African countries with our resources and minerals being exploited. So I just think our problem is the leadership that we have, because how can criminals be overpowering leadership? And also it brings me to the question of security, which is what I think we should invest in. You know, I mean, if we do invest so much in security, then we don't have so much to lose. So maybe we should, in terms of like involving international, we should involve them in a way of security. And also, I think probably another thing that I realized with our leaders, they are the ones most of the times that open the door for those criminals to exercise what they're doing, because they have their side deals that they're doing with them. And we know that for sure. In Africa, it's very common. And we don't really talk about these things like as transparent as well. So I just feel like we need to find a platform where such acts in terms of trade are governed and monitored. Maybe that's the best way we can actually govern our resources and minerals. Yeah, thank you.
You can pass it right to the back there.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup Dr Mukwege pour votre présence aujourd'hui. Je me permets de vous poser la question en français aussi. Imad Karimou de l'Université des Nations Unies. Je vois que la discussion s'est beaucoup focalisée sur les acteurs internationaux, y compris les acteurs africains. Mais je pense que c'est intéressant de regarder un peu ce qui se passe au sein de la classe politique congolaise et notamment à l'échelle nationale. Dernièrement, pas plus tard que la semaine dernière, ont eu lieu les États généraux de la justice qui ont établi de façon consensuelle un diagnostic sur la justice congolaise où je pense que vous serez d'accord, qui dit que la justice congolaise est malade. Et pourtant, les discussions se sont très peu focalisées sur la question des violences basées sur le genre à l'Est, beaucoup plus sur les questions de corruption, sur les questions d'impunité des politiques congolaises, etc. Ça m'amène à ma question de la volonté politique au sein de la classe politique congolaise. On parle beaucoup de ces sujets-là à l'international, mais quand on regarde à l'intérieur même de la RDC, on a l'impression que la volonté politique baisse, alors même qu'on sait que les cas, eux, augmentent. Donc, c'est ma première question. Et ma deuxième question, c'est pourquoi ? Il y a des choses qui ont été mentionnées de dire, oui, mais beaucoup de ces gens-là sont des criminels ou sont des gens qui ont un lien avec les dynamiques criminelles à l'Est, mais pas tous. Le gouvernement actuel de la RDC est en exercice depuis moins d'1 an. C'est la première fois qu'on a un ministre de la Justice qui est aussi jeune. Donc, finalement, on a quand même un renouveau relatif de la classe politique, et pourtant ces problèmes persistent. Donc pourquoi, à votre avis?
Yeah, excellent. Maybe.
Yeah. Mais,
Je vais peut-être répondre les 3 questions qui ont des connexions sur les leaders africains. Je pense que le problème de l'Afrique, pour moi, je considérais que c'est malhonnête de les traiter comme si c'était un problème qui nous est créé par les autres. Je crois que le jour où les Africains prendront conscience que d'abord, elle a dit le problème des minéraux, que nous ne sommes pas pauvres. On n'est pas pauvres. Je crois que lorsque un pays comme la République démocratique du Congo, des pays voisins peuvent exporter jusqu'à de 3-4 milliards de dollars en or, on n'est pas pauvres. La richesse est là. Les possibilités de transformer ces richesses est là. Mais le grand problème, effectivement, comme vous venez de le dire, nous avons un problème des leaders qui est un problème réel. Et ce problème, s'il n'est pas résolu, si les leaders ne comprennent pas leurs responsabilités, ça pourra nous poser des graves conséquences dans nos pays respectifs. Et moi, je pense que lorsque les leaders dans des États changent et que le leader, ce n'est pas un leader qui se met en place pour ses propres intérêts, on peut voir l'évolution qui est très, très rapide. Par contre, lorsque les leaders sont pour leurs intérêts, quelles que soient les richesses que vous pouvez avoir, la pauvreté persiste. Et donc, pour moi, je crois que nous ne sommes pas pauvres. Beaucoup de pays ont des leaders qui ne méritent pas et qui ne voient que leur intérêt, avec comme conséquence, c'est que Koulibaly à stigmatiser de jeunes qui partent et qui vont mourir dans l'océan. Donc nous devons prendre conscience que ce que nous subissons n'est pas seulement de la responsabilité des autres. Nous avons notre responsabilité et nous devons l'assumer. Mais ceci étant, je crois que la communauté internationale doit assumer sa part de responsabilité. J'ai parlé des crimes contre l'humanité. Ce n'est pas un pays qui va le résoudre si le pays lui-même a été impliqué dans ces crimes. Aujourd'hui, par exemple, comme la planète est menacée par les changements climatiques, qu'est-ce qu'on voit? On voit tout l'engagement que le monde peut faire puisque c'est un problème qui nous concerne tous. Pourquoi les problèmes africains, lorsqu'ils concernent l'humanité, on ne voit pas le même engagement? C'est ça, moi, ma grande question. Et là, je crois que nous devons appeler la communauté internationale de jouer son rôle. Sinon, pourquoi nous sommes dans les Nations Unies si on n'existe pas? On n'est pas au Conseil de sécurité, on est là pour accompagner les autres. Et quand on a les problèmes, on nous dit c'est vos problèmes. Ça ne sert à rien. Et je pense que si nous formons, nous sommes dans un groupe, nous devons quand même aussi savoir qu'est-ce que nous gagnons en étant dans le groupe. Et moi, je pense que la chose qu'on pourrait gagner, c'est par exemple une justice internationale qui serait sans frontières et qui permettrait à ce que les dirigeants qui abusent comprennent que si au niveau national, ils ne peuvent pas subir des sanctions, mais s'ils commettent des crimes contre l'humanité ou contre le climat, par exemple, qu'ils puissent répondre de ces actes, ce qui n'est pas le cas aujourd'hui. Et moi, je suis convaincu que la solution, on pourra nous accompagner, mais la solution nous appartient. Si on ne trouve pas des solutions durables par rapport aux problèmes que nous avons, en effet, je crois que les autres vont nous regarder et tant qu'ils bénéficient, il a très bien dit, bon, ben, si les compagnies, les entreprises peuvent accéder à nos minéraux par des voies illégales, pourquoi ils vont faire un effort pour que ça soit propre? C'est notre responsabilité. Et je pense que cette responsabilité, nous devons l'accepter, mais on ne doit pas dédouaner la communauté internationale par rapport à sa responsabilité qui est acceptée par le droit international et humanitaire et acceptée par notre charte des Nations Unies. Et lorsque ces instruments ne sont pas utilisés, je crois que nous devons pouvoir faire entendre notre voix.
I get the sense that was the best part of the whole thing. I catch quite a bit, but not all of it. So Agnes, I don't know if you feel able, you can summarize both the question and the answer bit. We're about out of time, but I don't know if you have to run. Agnes, I'd like, if you could, please.
I'll summarize quickly. The question was on the international community and African actors, because international discussions are more on corruptions and less on conflict-related sexual violence. And what's the political will in Congo? So Dr. Mukwege answered that one of the biggest African problem is that yes, it's dishonest to treat our problems as being problems caused by outsiders. We are not a poor country. We have the possibility to transform these issues. The issue is in the leadership. They don't understand that, yes, it's if leaders do not put their interest, I'm sorry, I was taking notes. Yes. So leaders should put, when leaders do not put their interests first, then the country can prosper. But that doesn't mean that our international community does not have a job in this. The international community should still take action. And he gave the example of what we see with climate change. We see that there is global engagement. And what's happening in Congo, we also need international justice without borders. We need sanctions, and the solution is ours. And if companies can access our minerals illegally, that means that there needs to be reform on our end as well.
Beautiful. Agnes, you really earned your keep today. We are out of time. But I would give you the opportunity if you want to say one closing remark before I close at all. Maybe I'm tempted to ask you what I asked you back in the green room, so to speak, we've closed. Do you, given this challenge that you pose, that the future of the world, the future of Congo are interconnected, do you have a message as an elder for the young people of the world who may be feeling a bit discouraged about the direction, about the failures of our leadership, and about, for women in particular, what would appear to be a global backlash against women's rights? What is your message as an elder for the young people of the world?
Je crois que là, je vais vraiment couper. Hein. Aujourd'hui, je crois que le monde fait face à une crise sans précédent. Et je crois qu'il est de la responsabilité de nous tous, même si on peut être de différentes générations, mais de pouvoir transmettre un message clair. J'étais à Hiroshima, j'ai vu ce qui s'est passé, et je crois que quand on voit comment une bombe atomique peut détruire, on a tout simplement peur de voir que chaque pays va avoir une arme atomique, nucléaire, sachant que c'est une arme qui détruit l'humanité et détruit les innocents, détruit sans distinction la nature, les humains, etc. Mais on voit très bien que nous sommes dans une période où c'est comme si on oublie ce qui s'est passé en 1945, on oublie le drame que l'humanité a connu, on oublie vite, 80 ans seulement, ce n'est pas beaucoup, ce n'est pas encore un siècle, mais c'est comme si on a déjà oublié ce que le monde est capable de faire et comment le monde peut être détruit par nous les humains. Et cet oubli, je crois qu'il faudrait peut-être que nous, les sages, les vieux, nous puissions rappeler que c'est extrêmement dangereux la course à l'armement nucléaire, puisqu'en fait, les jours où un touche sur le bouton pour une raison, détruire le monde, ça peut aller très vite. Et aujourd'hui, associé à l'intelligence artificielle, on peut être dans des situations que personne ne peut contrôler. Et je crois que c'est oublier ce qui s'est passé en 1945, qu'aujourd'hui, on voit les conflits monter en intensité et des arbitres deviennent eux-mêmes des joueurs. Donc, nous sommes dans une période extrêmement dangereuse. Ça, c'est un. Deux, lorsqu'il vient de droits des femmes, moi, je pense que j'ai vu, il faut se dire que les Françaises ont eu le droit de vote après la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Donc, ce n'est pas très loin quand le droit de vote a été accordé en France, par exemple. Et dans les pays les plus avancés, ils ont peut-être 100 ou 110 ans de droit de vote comme la Finlande. Mais la grande question, c'est de voir à quel point, assez rapidement, pour un leader, il peut considérer que ce droit des femmes, ça devient excessif et que ces droits peuvent être retirés. Et moi, je voudrais dire aux jeunes, si vous ne vous battez pas pour vos droits, eh bien, ces droits, ce n'est pas un acquis définitif. C'est un combat continu. Et ce combat, c'est les jeunes qui doivent le faire. Si je dois parler avec mes filles, je dois leur dire, battez-vous pour vos droits. Si vous ne vous battez pas, il y aura quelqu'un qui va vous arracher ces droits. Et ça, je crois que c'est capital de le voir. Je ne vais pas entrer dans les détails, mais moi, j'ai une grande admiration pour la capacité de ce que les femmes peuvent faire. Mais j'ai vu récemment à quel point, au niveau des Nations Unies, on ne pouvait pas faire passer une résolution qui comprenait tout simplement, lorsqu'il reprenait la santé reproductive des femmes, cette résolution ne pouvait pas passer. J'ai assisté à ça et j'avais compris qu'il y a un danger. Donc, il faut vous battre pour vos droits. Je crois que pour terminer cette question, les jeunes devraient comprendre, peut-être, je vois que la jeunesse comprend mieux le changement climatique que les personnes âgées. Et tant mieux. Peut-être que pour ça, les jeunes peuvent pousser les États à être beaucoup plus responsables par rapport à leurs devoirs, par rapport à la protection de notre environnement. Et je pense qu'un droit, lorsqu'on acquiert un droit, on doit le protéger et on doit le défendre. Sinon, en fait, ces droits, vous les perdez. Et quand vous les perdez, eh ben, c'est très difficile de pouvoir l'obtenir.
To begin, I was in Hiroshima and we see the power of nuclear weapons. And it's as if today we forget what happened in 1945 and how the world can be destroyed just by humans themselves. So maybe us as elders, we need to remind what nuclear weapons can cause in the world. That's the first point. The second point is on women's rights. The example that French women got rights after the Second World War, and that in certain countries, women's rights are not that old. So the question is, at what point is it fine for a leader to decide what women's rights are? And yes, the fights on rights, the fights on women's rights is not just a fight that stops, but it's a continuous fight. And young people should fight for their rights. I have seen how resolutions who mention reproductive rights can be vetoed at the UN Security Council. So my message to youth is to fight for your rights. Another example is the way youth understand better than elders the issue of climate change. And this highlights the importance of putting youth perspective at the forefront of these discussions.
Excellent. Thank you. Wonderful. I really just want to reiterate many of the things you were saying. Just going back, we cannot build peace upon mass graves. Justice and accountability are critical, otherwise the cycle will continue. This economic war demands an economic solution, and we must provide the sanctions and incentives to bring business around the table, but ultimately, the only answer is to end the war. I think your point reiterated over and over again that the future of our planet and the fate of Congo are interconnected is extremely important, and one that we're seeing an issue again and again around the world. The core problem, it would seem, is leadership. And we have a global crisis of leadership, but I believe you and the elders are showing the kind of leadership, that long-term, long-view leadership, as your former chair would say, which we really need to address all these issues. You, in addressing the question of what we can do, you said that we need your voice. Well, we are really grateful to have your voice. Your voice was heard today, and I just want to say thank you. We will be listening. We will continue to engage and amplify all your messages as best we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you.